evening and welcome to Monday Night Fitba. We are back in our new home in the new studio, and the Hibs guys are being introduced to it for the first time tonight, so again bear with us a little bit while we get our bearings. It's a wee bit cosier, but I like it. It's more professional.
More pro, yeah, I like it.
It is, aye. Right, this is the counterpoint to last week's episode. This is our Hibs special, and it's our playoff preview special, because you may have noticed there's some fairly momentous games coming up this week. So I'm going to be taking a back seat as much as possible and allowing the chat all to be about Hibernian. But let's start on a point that concerns both clubs. So we discussed last week at length, for those of our Hibs audience who could stomach the hour and a half about Hearts last week, you would have heard us discuss the whole spectre of ground sharing in Edinburgh. Now, Jim McDowell 63 on Twitter got in touch this week with one question that I think opens the debate up perfectly, because we really want to get the Hibs perspective on this whole topic. So what he wants to know is how you guys would feel as Hibs supporters about being put in the away end or being treated as the away team at your own stadium at Easter Road for a derby.
That's exactly what I thought about last week when I was listening to you guys talking. I was like, that would be my one real misgiving.
Unacceptable circumstances.
There would have to be a clause in the contract. Like, I enjoyed listening to you guys last week, and I enjoyed Ross saying that Hibs should swallow their pride and let you guys come and cheer. And I was like, hang on a second, who's
you can always rely on Ross for it.
Who's coming to us with their begging bowl? I mean, obviously this is all hypothetical and possibly might never happen, but it's good for a chat when there's not much happening between the two teams. But I mean, I just thought that was funny, as if Hibs have got something to lose from not letting you share the ground with us. I thought that was quite amusing from Ross. But that was the one thing, because I was thinking about the pros and cons, and I wouldn't necessarily be against it if there was a significant financial incentive for Hibs. But the derbies would be the one issue that would put me off. And again, I mean, obviously we'll get onto it. There is a chance that we might not be in the same league next year. In which case that obviously changes things as well. I don't know if I would feel better or worse about that. But I don't know, I mean, is it a given that you guys are going to get Murrayfield if you do decide to renovate your stadium? Because it just seems to be the suggestion that we'll just play at Murrayfield. I mean, the Edinburgh Rugby, or if Edinburgh Rugby indicate that they'd be happy with that at all? I
think the main suggestion there is that there's a positive relationship. Even when Hearts were completely chaotic in terms of how it was run, they still managed to maintain a relatively positive relationship with Scottish Rugby and Murrayfield. So now that we're an actual business who's at least decently run, you would have to admit, you would assume that relationship would continue, and again, it's essentially free money for Murrayfield because the stadium's not being used for any other events anyway. So I think from that perspective it would work. But I think most jambos, if you took the club allegiances out of it and you purely introduced the discussion of, do you want this 21,000 seater stadium that's been built quite recently and at least is set up for a good atmosphere that Hearts could in theory sell out, or do you want this massive bowl that holds 67,000 people in it? That's where it comes in. If you look at it logically like that, Easter Road's a no-brainer. But it's when you get into the
surely Hearts 400,000 fans could fill Murrayfield, could you know?
I think that's Seville that you're talking about.
No, that's the old parades in Edinburgh.
That's when they're in the Champions League next year.
I was more curious about how Foundation of Hearts contributors would feel about their money going towards as much a Murrayfield rental as much as an Easter Road rental. Like, did they envisage that being part of their contribution, paying another business to kind of house them? And how people would think about that. That's not me being
it's a means to an end though. Hearts supporters know and hope that their money is going towards retaining Tynecastle. In some way be
voted upon, or is it just going to be decided on behalf of the fans, if you like?
That's the question. But the big factor there is there's no point in Hearts fans voting on it if it would instantly be vetoed by Hibs. And I think that's the one thing that we won't see this time that you probably would have seen before. Vladimir Romanov would have just gone out with a questionnaire, which stadium do you want to share, and then Hibs would come out saying, we don't know anything about this. He's just decided that he's getting this stadium. Whereas now I think there would at least have been some discussion before the question was. I would be surprised if Anne Budge hadn't floated the idea with Leanne Dempster already. But just generally, guys, how, Connor, you've said already about the financial incentive if it was strong enough. Craig, Mikey, would you be completely against it, or is it something that
for me the only issue for me is the pitch? Really, I don't think that, like, people talking like, no, we're going to rip seats out and this blah blah blah. It's not going to happen, and if it does, it's obviously going to be paid for and all this usual nonsense. For me, it's the pitch. We finally have a manager and a team that actually want to seem to use it. And I'd hate the idea of it. It's going to get ripped to pieces by being used twice as much as it always has been. So if Hearts were to in some way contribute to, I think the only way that you can sustain 38 matches on the same pitch is if it's one of these hybrid synthetic grass combinations.
That's the 5G ones. I think Arsenal have got one of them.
Yeah, they thread a lot of them synthetic through it. And I think that's the only way you can sustain it. I don't know the costing on that, but I doubt it's probably out with the reach of any of the clubs individually, possibly even combined on top of Hearts rental payments. So to me that's the main bugbear of it. The home and away thing on a derby, like, is a joke. It's good fun, and it might be something that Hibs could sort of say, like, we're not going to take the away end, but we'll have like an away side.
I think that's what we'd have to do. The same as
I'd quite enjoy going into the away stand.
I wouldn't.
I don't know why. I think it'd be a quite
to see how the other half live.
Just
three sides of Hearts fans. I don't like that at all.
No, well, if they're going to ground share with us, then the west, the east and the famous five are the home stands. So if Hearts are the home side for a derby, they should technically have, we should
but they'd be the advantage of providing a facility, and I think we should use that position of power to leverage any advantage we can. So
but how could you segregate the famous five stand for the west and the east? That's so that.
Oh right, you mean
so,
coming in?
So how would that work logistically?
Well, if Hibs get the east stand and they come up St Clair Street,
I suppose
and then you close off the rest.
Every detail's
I've got this plan. Me and Police Scotland have discussed this in great detail. It's fine.
It'd be something a wee bit different. I don't know.
I wouldn't like us to strike to just an away end. I'd like to keep a side and have like at least a vocal 6,000.
But it's even in that scenario, there are interesting things like the main stand, no matter what, would have to be Hearts supporters. But that's where the director's box is and everything. So you've got that thing at the manager's office and all of those kind of facilities. The home dressing room.
I'm sure you can get Robbie away photo cabin.
I'm sure you think Hearts would probably use the away dressing room throughout the course of the season, I would imagine.
Yeah, but then Robbie Nelson would have to have a base. I mean, he has to be able to host the other manager. So where does he do that? In the boot room? Like, it's this strange situation that once you get into the tiny nuances of it, you realise how
deal of first class hospitality facilities that they can make use of, and I'm sure you can rent out to you for a fair price.
Grant Stockton twice as much hospitality work every single weekend. But I mean, a lot of Hibs fans are questioning, like, we managed to build a new stand without all this ground sharing chaos. We did it all one at a time, and I think we're sort of forgetting what an asbestos and death trap the Tynecastle is, perhaps. But that's just to annoy Ross if he's listening in his car. But it's just the main stand at Tynecastle that needs to be replaced, or is there like far more serious restructuring work?
It's the main stand, but ultimately that would.
There's no like major behind it, is there?
That would be a fairly major hit on the attendance, and that you'd see the attendance drop to about 12 and a half.
Like I said, Hibs had to do the same thing when we did the main stand. We still had the old terrace in, which is obviously a reduced capacity to what we have now.
And there will, of course, if after the conversations with Leanne Dempster, Hibs have come back with a certain figure to rent the stadium, and that is more than the cost of living without those 4,000 fans would be, then there probably will have to be a decision. The difficult thing for Hearts is you're operating, and this, it seems like we're digging back and forth, but Hearts currently have 12,500 season ticket holders. You would have to tell season ticket holders they're not allowed to renew their season ticket in order to make room for away supporters, which is obviously then a huge difficulty for everyone involved. You'd have to have a waiting list for any new people. That's a lot of administration that would need to go on. So I think that's where the real question mark comes in. But just to round up on this, so we can actually get to the proper Hibs chat, because I don't want to commandeer this in the direction of Tynecastle. I want to let it go to Easter Road properly without the spectre of being in the way into Easter Road in your own stadium. Would you back it if Leanne Dempster was to come out and say to the Hibs supporters, in our opinion, from a business perspective, this is the right thing?
Yeah, I think, you assume, as you guys hinted last week, that Anne Bodge and Leanne Dempster are sort of above the fray when it comes to these things a wee bit, and we'll probably do the sensible things and won't make stupid comments like we've all been doing. But she would have to make it quite clear, we're not doing Hearts a favour here. It's a good business decision. If we want to keep players like Scott Allen in the squad, this is really going to be a significant chunk. If she made some sort of vow that it was going to be put towards the playing stuff, for example, then I think a lot of Hibs fans would get behind it. So I personally wouldn't be against it, and I think it'd be quite funny to see, as I said, Hearts coming to us cap in hand looking for a favour, and us deciding whether we should oblige or not. Mikey. I mean, you could also play Almond Vale or whatever it's called this week. So.
Mikey?
Like I said, for me it's the pitch situation, being now want to actually use our park.
So would you be more interested in Alan Stubbs' opinion on it than Leanne Dempster's?
I think Leanne Dempster would make the right call, having already dealt with Alan Stubbs and his wishes. To me, she's going to start. She's already making decisions with the kind of an element of the fans' heads and hearts in place throughout the season. I think that she'll continue to do that and make a call that will please the majority of Hibs fans. She's not going to do anything based on just what she thinks. At the end of the day, her customer has to also agree with what's going on. So I think that'll be done with majority vote, if you like, the consensus of the general population of Hibs fans.
Craig?
If it's beneficial for the club, monetary wise, and if it's beneficial for the club financial wise, I wouldn't be against it at all. Okay,
perfect. Right, I'm going to throw a couple of quick ads so that when we come back we can be non-stop Hibs for the rest of the night. Stay tuned to Monday Night Football on Radio Saltire. Thank you for staying tuned to Monday Night Football on Radio Saltire. Right, lads, seeing as it's topical and it's just come out this afternoon, somewhat unexpectedly I think generally, what's the reactions to the new Hibs kit for next season?
Like it.
Yeah, love it.
Like it. I would the only I'm
looking for you to try and channel your Project Runway here. You need to get out for 2 minutes. You need to just think about the fashion side of this.
The only bugbear I've got is that I would have preferred green socks.
Is it white socks?
White shorts.
I've not actually seen the shorts and socks. Okay.
Aye, so that's sort of the only thing that I would personally have liked different. I think the sponsor, it's been worked into the top rather than just a logo stuck over it.
Yeah.
So there might be issues with that coming off maybe after 3-4 washes. But no, I'm fairly happy with it. I think it's nice.
I think it's a massive improvement on the t-shirt I'm wearing at the minute.
I was going to say you've come modelling this season.
I mean, it grew on me a wee bit. I don't know, but I think a lot of people are quite disappointed with the strip for this season, or last season. The red obviously doesn't go very well, and I don't think the green sleeves particularly work either. It looks to me like they got a hold of the t-shirts and went, how on earth are we going to market this? So obviously mistakes happen sometimes. It was alongside a whole load of other unfortunate events at Easter Road that sort of it added to people's anger. But no, the new top looks really nice. I like the colour, and again the bottle green I think it's a nice colour. Good to have the white sleeves back. The sponsor's a lot more tasteful this year, as Craig said, so I'll be looking forward to seeing the away strip as well, as I think Mikey might touch on. He's got some strong opinions about how our away top should go.
Have you?
Always purple.
Always.
That must be.
Okay.
I have to go some purple. But no, I like the new kit. Like Craig, I would prefer green socks, but it goes back to you about see the 2000-2001 season with the White Sox for the majority of the season, and we had a relatively decent time of it. Finished third in the league, I think. So hopefully we can evoke a bit of that spirit. But
are we going to, from an outsider's perspective, are we going to see a settled colour of green at some point? Because it seems like they're quite experimental at the moment with the green. Are we thinking that this is the one that they'll then stick with going forward?
Hope so. I like it. It's to me, it's the right shade, the right darkness of green that I think a Hibs strip should be.
Okay.
There's been a lot of kind of quite lighter tones of it in the past, but for me it should be not quite as dark as this season, but not as light as some of like the kind of mid-90s, late 90s, early 2000s efforts. I remember a couple of 95, I just imagine Kevin Harper in it, and it was proper luminous
almost
green.
Lime green.
Yeah, but it is an interesting thing though, because you do notice on that top that you're wearing there, Connor, that badge is a significantly different green than the actual top.
Yeah, it's the same on the current top as well.
Yeah, normally the top is based on the colour in the badge. Obviously this season was painted as being kind of historical significance going back to the roots, but
I think the first bottle green top was a nice surprise. I think it looked quite classy, and I think it was a bit unexpected as well. I kind of like the emerald green, I must say. I prefer the lighter colour personally, but as I said, the new top is pretty classy looking, especially compared to last year's effort. So I'm not going to complain too much. I do wonder if they're going to stick with it, or whether they're maybe going to try and rotate it on a yearly or 2 yearly basis. And,
it is interesting because in the final reference to that lot from the other side of the city, I know that Anne Budge, one of the first things she did was she agreed a tone of maroon, so they've now literally got a set, a Pantone thing, and that's every strip will be based on that maroon from now on. So there's none of this depending which design, who's the supplier and who's the designer for the kit, and whether they want to go light or not. It's just, well, that's Hearts colour now. It would be interesting to see if Leanne Dempster tries to implement the same thing, because it is, when you're looking at kind of brand identification, most brands look for that you see that colour, that's Hibs green.
See, I think with the emerald green, if you put that strip, if you put an emerald green strip in front of somebody who had no knowledge of Scottish football apart from maybe names of teams, I've got a funny feeling that the majority would say that's a Celtic colour.
So for you, like the bottle green to identify it? For me,
it would be bottle green every single time.
Okay, right, that's enough. Thank you for entering that kind of femme. We've said it many times about trying to introduce the feminine side of football, and we've done it in our 5 minute chat.
Funny how it's sexist there, Sam.
It's about being, it's metrosexuality. Then let's put it that way.
I think it's funny at this time of year, fans forum just turn into this, because there's not much else to talk about. It's just page after page about what trim they'd like to see and which manufacturer. A
certain club made the mistake of teasing the socks first, and there was 2 weeks of meltdown. Just the worst socks I've ever seen. I'm like, how often do you buy the socks of a strip?
But I do like, this is going off topic a wee bit, but I do like it when someone does something completely bizarre, like St Mirren from last year with their yellow top with the sort of emerging stripes in the chest. Someone
posted earlier on Twitter a photo, I think it's a Danish team, I can't remember the name of the team off the top of my head, but their strip's bright red and it's made of rubber. Legitimately rubber.
It's Gimp FC or something.
We'll try and find it and post it on the Twitter. It's horrendous. It's truly horrendous. The only positive for it I can see,
always seem to go a bit wild with their away strips. They always seem to have something interesting in their away.
They've had a few pink
numbers, pink and khaki, sort of kind of army motifs and stuff like that on them.
Okay, right, let's get back onto the main thing that counts on the park. So we're going to move west slightly and talk about the occurrences at Ibrox yesterday, because that's going to lead us perfectly into two massive games that are coming up this week. What did we learn, if anything, from Rangers versus Queen of the South at Ibrox yesterday, boys?
I think we learned that, we were kind of saying on the Facebook chat at the time, Hibs shouldn't really have anything to worry about from either of these teams. I mean, Rangers were looking very direct, and they're certainly looking a bit more of a scoring threat than they were earlier in the season. But really, you can narrow that down to about 3 players that are looking like they may cause us problems. Other than that, man for man, we should be able to do the job. Particularly after they should have quite heavy legs, because that was by the end of the game yesterday, they were sort of clinging on by the skin of their teeth a wee bit. So you'd imagine that given only a couple of days rest, they'll still be feeling a bit heavy, and Queen of the South gave them a good run, and I thought
the 3 players thing, I think, is a telling point, because we're now seeing the backlash from the early season when Rangers, no matter how well they did when you actually look at the realistic squad and the strength that they have, and you see, well, they're alright, they're decent enough, they've got a few journeyman pros, and even when they were playing well for the players they actually have, they were still, but this is Rangers, they should be doing much better. Now we're seeing people go the other way, where they're hanging on in the last 10 minutes at Ibrox against Queen of the South, and people are saying, but that was a good Rangers performance.
Yeah, that's what confused me. A lot of people were saying that, and it's like, I mean, fair enough, for a lot of the game they were in control, but the last 10 minutes it was real backs to the wall stuff, and
they're almost benefiting now from how poor they've been for the last 9 months.
They've lowered their own standards and everyone else's perception of them so far.
Yeah.
That have such a mediocre overall performance has been sort of went, we're doing things right, we're getting there. I was like, really? Like, that was massively unimpressive. So
let's try and focus in on the couple of aspects of it that were impressive then. Mikey, for you, who are the players that look on form in that Rangers side?
Vucic and Lee Wallace are one of their most dangerous players. Nicky Law comes in and out of games and can look dangerous for spells, and Connor have been talking away, and Connor quite liked the guy Murdoch in midfield, who does look like a good player. Beyond that, there's not a great deal of like what I'd kind of sort of, I don't know, creativity and technically proficient players on that side who are going to make things happen. So I think there's an opportunity to sort of develop a system and a shape that nullifies I think the supply basically into Vucic. If you do that, I don't think there's a lot like to fear. I mean, their strikers combined this season must have about 25 goals between them,
if you're lucky,
between all of their strikers. So I think that if we can keep Wallace quiet, Murdoch, if we stick somebody out on the right hand side who's in some way useful, Law plays in a kind of advanced role, if we can cut off a bit of semi-quality supply to them, I think we'll create a lot. Their defence still looks unbelievably static. There's not a bit of pace amongst them. I think that we can cause them serious problems, whether it be playing on the counter-attack or actually just dominating possession and building opportunities and building phases of play. I think there's not a huge amount to fear from them on attacking front. I think they're still incredibly shaky at the back.
Craig, as we've said, there were a few decent performances. There was a few good performances in comparison with what those same players were producing 6 months ago. But was there any performances or anything about Rangers that genuinely worried you ahead of the 2 games?
I don't think so. I'd maybe say that I'd agree with Mikey in the fact that if we're going to, obviously we need to play our own game, but we also need to make sure that we do nullify someone like Vucic, who has got, if he gets the ball in a dangerous area, he has got quality that can hurt us. I think it's good that Gray's back and Gray's fit, because when they've been up against each other this season, Gray's had, in my opinion, Gray's had Wallace's number, and that shows in the fact that he scored at Easter Road and the fact that he scored at Ibrox as well. So it's more a case of playing our game, but also making sure that we've got enough to stop there. They've not got a lot of creativity anyway. If I was Stubbs, I'd probably even look at maybe giving Scott Robertson the job to just following Vucic everywhere he goes. Just stick to him. Didn't give him a minute's rest. Just as soon as he's got the ball, he's on him. Even if he's not got the ball, he's right behind him, letting him know that he's there.
Connor, we're talking about negating Rangers' attacking threats there. Is it going to be that kind of game for you? Is it going to be the game where you need to negate their attacking threats because one game can really swing it in one team's favour? Or do you think it's more likely to be you attack, we attack, and we see who comes out best?
I think what I'm thinking of more than the game yesterday, I'm thinking more about the last game at Easter Road where Rangers won, and they kind of got the better of us because we we didn't play our strengths, and that was Rangers were very direct in that game. So things could work out like that, and I think what we need to do is, if that's how the game starts, if Rangers are being incredibly direct, we kind of need to weather the storm as we've done at Ibrox in the past this season. Mentioning David Gray, I think the last time at Easter Road, he wasn't fully fit, which you'd hope at this point, David Gray will be back to full strength after the trip to Spain and everything, because Keith Watson had a torrid time against Lee Wallace for the remainder of that game, and I think that's ultimately how Rangers got the better of us. So I think we need to play to our strengths and just to take control of the game and just let them bash their head against the wall for 20 minutes if that's what it takes, because I don't think it will end up being back and forth. I think Rangers are, Stuart McCall has got them playing to their strengths, but they're a very limited team, and we need to take advantage of that and let them run themselves into the ground if they want to, because we've got higher amount of skill players and players that can take control of the game. And as I was saying to Mikey in the car, and I did like the look of this young lad Murdoch, but I think our midfield will be just too experienced for him. I don't think he's faced a proper side yet.
And again, I think it's that lowering of expectations that this guy Murdoch, 3 or 4 years ago, who would have talked about a guy like him going, he looks like a player. Like, this guy now stands out in the Rangers side because there's so little special ability amongst them. He might well go on and be a really good player, but at the moment, he's sort of getting a lot of praise very early in his career because he's surrounded by dross, really. My biggest fear is that Rangers come to Easter Road with any kind of result to defend, and I think that's why the game on Wednesday is absolutely enormous. That if it's the case that we draw, we'll go there and draw. I think we'd probably take that right now, because I think we'll do them Easter Road, because they'll know that they really need to get a result at Ibrox. Realistically, I think that opens up an opportunity for us to take advantage of them on the counter attack, because there's so little pace in their side. Obviously we've lost a lot of pace with Boyle coming out the side, but we still have that kind of the mobility and people's intelligent movement and attack that I think will work to our advantage. So I think that it's important that we don't defend for the game, but we do defend really well, because I think that they'll get frustrated and run out of ideas. And like I said, the last thing we need is them getting any kind of result to bring to Easter Road, because in that last match at Easter Road they showed that they'll come and they'll put basically 5 centre halves in the park and play it really, really stuffy and solid, and try and nick something out of it. So I think that we need to find a counterbalance between, like you say, negating what Rangers can do and also making sure that we influence the game enough to try and get a positive result for ourselves.
Okay, that's an interesting direction that you take us in, because I think it's vitally important here that we do recognise that these are two completely different games that will require different tactics, maybe even different personnel. So let's single them out and let's try and go through them for obvious reasons. We will start with a game on Wednesday night. This is maybe going to be slightly affected by something that I think Connor referred to already, which is the fact that Queen of the South gave Rangers, however you look at it, quite a good game at the weekend, and it's a short turnaround time, 3 days for matches of this magnitude, both at home in front of that large crowd. That's a lot of nervous energy that you're going to expend in those couple of games. Does that come into the thinking, Craig, capitalising on 2 games in such quick succession? The Hibs try and explode out of the blocks with that in mind?
I would think so. I'd like to see us do it. I'd like to see us just come out and just go right at them, because I think, despite the fact that we finished second, I think in this game the pressure's all on Rangers. It's like Mikey said, if we could go there and get a draw, obviously we want to go there and win, but we didn't want to give them anything to come back to Easter Road defending. If they've got a 1-2-1 lead, God forbid a 2-0 lead to defend, then you could see a maybe 9,000-10,000 crowd at Easter Road. But if we've got, if we can get there and get a draw, I think we'd easily sell out Easter Road pretty quickly. I don't know, I've just went right off on a different subject, but no, I think it's going with the energy levels. If we can, I would like to see us come at the blocks, but I'd rather let us just try and maybe slow the game down for the first 15-20 minutes, let the crowd start to get on their backs a wee bit, because for me the pressure's all on them. We've sort of realise that it's not the be all and end all for us to go up this season. If we don't go up this season, we at least will have a full summer to prepare, and then hopefully win the league next season. Whereas Rangers have pretty much, it's for them, it's do or die whether they go up or not. For them, they have to go up. So I think energy levels plus the fact that the crowd will be on it from the first whistle, we should be looking to take advantage of that, either by coming out the blocks and getting an early goal and making them even more restless, or just slowing the game down for the first, because we always used to say when you go to Ibrox or Parkhead, keep them quiet for the first 15 to 25 minutes, and that's when they start getting on their backs, and that's what we need to try and take advantage of on Wednesday.
They booed them off at half time yesterday, which is just half time in a playoff, and they're already
it was 2-2, so
they were drawn, but overall,
I would love to see us go there and try and really run them into the ground, because regardless, if the result is still manageable after Ibrox, if we've spent 90 minutes fully rested, it's been 2 weeks since we last played, and been away a bit of sun on their backs, they're going to be absolutely buzzing for it. If we can go out there and run them into the ground for 90 minutes on the back of 2 tough games, that gives us a further advantage at Easter Road as well, that they are a 4th match into this series, if you like, with very little respite and break. So if we've really put the yardage in against them and got a useful result, I think that puts us at a huge advantage at Easter Road. We're going to have a big crowd behind us, a lot of heat on them. They're going to have a smaller crowd than usual, probably the smallest crowd they're going to have had at any game this season in terms of away support, which might end up working in their favour given how negative they've been towards them at times. But I think it's hugely important that we pick the right times, but really play with huge intensity at Ibrox, and force them into a sort of level of kind of physical and mental exhaustion.
Sorry mate, I hope that we sort of, because the last time before we played Rangers, all the talk was Hibs are going to do them. Hibs are going to, folk are putting money on the bookies, Hibs -2, Hibs -3, and it was ridiculous. And I think that some of that fed its way to our players. Obviously we finished the season really strong. We've been away, had a nice break. Well, the players have. And the Rangers have had their 2 games against Queen of the South, and they're playing us on Wednesday. So I hope that Stubbs has got them fully focused on the fact that despite how bad this Rangers team are, or how good they could be, or how good we are, everything that's went before just goes out the window. These games are different to the league games, because these are going to because I reckon whoever wins at this game will beat Motherwell. So for me, this game determines who actually goes up. So I hope that Stubbs just lets them focus completely on the game, know what's went before it, know what Rangers could do or what they couldn't do. Just let them go out and play their game, and not let any sort of complacency try and feed its way into their minds.
I think that the result against Falkirk on the last day of the season, I think, shows that Stubbs has found a way to get them to erase any negative kind of feelings about results, because we'd lost to Falkirk 2 weeks beforehand in the cup, and they turned around and went to whatever it's called now, the Falkirk Stadium, and got a cracking result. I think they need to implement that, whatever mindset they took to that match, they need to adopt it again, so they don't think about the fact that Rangers beat us last time and kind of outthought us to an extent. I think that it's really important that whatever Stubbs did with the side and the players as a group or individuals before that Falkirk match in the last day of the season, something similar happens again, and look, that last game against the Road does not matter, this is us against them, and approach it as an individual match. It's 2 matches, but this is a one-off event, if you like, and the 3 wins we've had against them this season mean nothing, and the 1 defeat means nothing. Go out there and believe that man for man you're a better side and get the job done. So hopefully that whatever worked for that match against Falkirk on the last day of the season is replicated, because they didn't seem to carry any of the baggage. I think knowing, because they played really well in the semi-final as well, made a difference. We just never took our chances. So I think that's an important thing as well, that anything that's left at the door from the previous 4 or 5, I suppose, with the Petrofac match, the 5 matches this season are just left at the door, and it's treated as a kind of standalone event.
I think it helps us at the first legs at Ibrox, knowing how well that we've played there before. I think it would have been I think we would have been completely different if the first leg was at Easter Road. I just think that it suits us better to play away first, knowing what we have to do when we're at home, rather than having to go to Ibrox and chase a result or defend a lead. I think we're much stronger now at home than what we used to be, and I'm much prefer the fact that we're having to go there first, because it's the onus is on them to get a result, not on us. It's all on them. So I'm quite glad that the first leg's at Ibrox.
Okay, let's start to focus in on personnel then, Connor. Who are we expecting to see? Obviously there's 2 different directions to go with this conversation, which is who you guys want to see and who you think you will see. We'll try and, as always, let those 2 things meet somewhere in the middle, and discuss what you think will be best, but also what you think Alan Stubbs will go with. In the best case scenario, those are the same thing. What are you expecting to see? Firstly, what system are you expecting to see as the away team at Ibrox?
Pretty sure for the Ibrox game we're going to do the 3-5-2 again.
Try and crowd them up.
Yes, but I mean, our options have been slightly limited. Obviously, Jordan Foster got injured on the last game of the season, which is a real shame because he was doing well again, but that also narrows our options down a wee bit as well. So the usual 3 at the back with Fontaine, Hanlon, and then the midfield, I guess I would choose Liam Craig. I would have him in the midfield, especially at Ibrox. After the last few games I've seen him in, he's really had a sort of redemption. He's turned himself around. He's had some brilliant games, and I think that a game at Ibrox is the perfect time for him. It's the perfect arena for him to play in. So from our usual midfield 5, I would probably choose him over McGeoch, with the option of having McGeoch on the bench and maybe having him on if things aren't quite going to plan. So we've got our Stevenson and Gray, assuming that Gray's back to full strength again, which I think he should be by now. It's been a long time. Gray to keep an eye on Wallace, and obviously Scott Allen, and I liked Craig's idea about maybe Robertson just keeping an eye on Vucic and just as a sort of more defensive midfielder, keeping an eye on Vucic and just keeping him under control in the centre of the park. Up front, I think I would go for Malonga and Cummings. I think Malonga is the type of player that needs to start. I don't think there's any point in bringing him off the bench, as we saw in the derby. I think he likes to get into the game just to see how the rhythm of the game's going. So I would have him up front, and I don't think you can discount Cummins. I think he's obviously scored a few times at Ibrox this year, and he's had some good games recently. So again, he might be the right man in the right man in the right place at the right time.
So just to recap that, because I'm going to go down the room and get reaction to that. So we're Oxley in goals, back 3 of Watson, Fontaine, Hanlon. Is Watson the third man in that if Forster's injured?
Yeah,
Forster's still injured.
Forster's out, I think, for another long spell, unfortunately. So
Watson's really the only option.
Yeah, unfortunately. So no, unfortunately, no, he's a good player. Sorry, I don't mean like unfortunately, because he's been a good player, but just unfortunate that our hands are tied a little. If we did want to change it around a wee bit, but no, I mean Watson's been great. That one game at Easter Road against the Rangers aside,
but he is maybe a more natural kind of footballing option at centre half, and that he does that. He's maybe a wee bit more of a ball carrier than any of the 3 conventional centre halves.
Yeah.
So then you've got Stevenson left and Gray right.
Yeah.
And then you've got Craig, Robertson and Allen as your midfield 3.
Yeah.
So both McGeoch and Fivey miss out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's why I would go for it. I mean, it's tough because we've got some great players in midfield, obviously, and that's been our that's been one of our blessings this year. It's a good problem to have, puzzling who to have in midfield. But I think the last time we played at Ibrox and Rangers did, it wasn't we won, but it wasn't an easy victory. And I was thinking, when I was watching it, we could do it with Liam Craig here. And I just think it's a good game for him. Maybe not over both legs, as we said, it's something to bear in mind. It is a 2-legged game, and I just think that Liam Craig will be in his element in the midfield there. And I
like the fact that you're fully justifying your selections here. Well, as if you've literally picked the team.
I've been thinking about Liam Craig a lot recently.
That's moving on swiftly from that one. Nice. And then Cummings and Malonga up front. Okay, Mikey, I'm going to you first because Craig was nodding too visibly. I think he might agree quite a lot. Do you agree with Connor's selection?
Yeah, to an extent. I've got a slight fear that the way Rangers play at the moment, also the fact that they're not anywhere near as like brutal as they were at the start of the season, I think that the 3-5-2, 5-3-2, whichever kind of combination you look at it, potentially exposes us a wee bit, especially down the left hand side, or Rangers left hand side, our right hand side. We know Wallace is going to play high up the park, but then the way they've played a lot recently, you're going to see. Is it Lowe? Nicky Law. Drop out left a lot, and you're looking at the sort of double teaming Gray quite a bit, or Watson having to step out from the centre and kind of creating little spaces and gaps for Vucic in there, and whoever's playing next to him. So I'm still perfectly willing to say that 3-5-2 is a good shout, but would a back four possibly give us, especially in that first leg, where you maybe don't want to necessarily expose yourself to losing the game, play a back four so as that we're going to Easter Road, and then we can kind of dictate how we play and how the result goes from there. Because I think that a 3-5-2 possibly puts us at risk of in those kind of like high, like Rangers high up the park in the wide areas, getting in like 2-on-1 situations, or having to pull a centre half out and leaving us short in the middle.
While we're on that topic, this might be a daft outsider's question, and feel free just to laugh me off if it is, but on the basis of this system, I agree with Mikey that Rangers do one thing they do have in their favour is they have some kind of movement now. The reason that they seem to be implementing Miller and Clark up front isn't necessarily anything to do with goal threat, it's just that their ability to run the channels on a consistent basis. Thinking of that in that 3 at the back system, a lot of the time Hibs seem to play with Hanlon and Fontaine essentially the wrong way around. How would we expect them to line up in a 3? Does Hanlon play in the centre and Fontaine on the left again?
Yep.
Would that, thinking about being exposed in the channels by Miller and Clark, would it maybe work more naturally to have Hanlon in that he is a wee bit closer to a full-back kind of centre-half than Fontaine? I think Fontaine is the rock there, so he's the one for me that should sit in the middle and govern and let the other two go and do the running in the channels and chase Miller and Clark. I just see that maybe Fontaine could be exposed by getting into positions he's not really that comfortable being in, whereas he's better as the guy marshalling from the centre. Is there any thoughts on that?
I think sometimes Fontaine gets a slightly raw deal and people think he's this bigger mobile stopper. I think in the last sort of month or so he's kind of been exposed a couple of times, like from these high balls that Peter Houston loves. So I think he's more of a footballer than he gets credit for. Like, he likes to kind of wander up the park with the ball at his feet and stuff like that. I don't think he's remotely fearful of being a footballing centre half. I'm not saying he's pinging, Matthias Sammer type passes to the opposite wingers and stuff like that, but I think the fact he's a big lad, like he's lean and he's not like a big sort of big brick wall type centre half. I don't think he'd have too much of a problem playing as that kind of the outside centre half, getting dragged out to left back now and again. He's not quick, but he's not slow, and I think that Hanlon's looked really, really assured in the middle of this season, winning a lot more of the aerial ball than he ever has, not getting knocked about and bullied about like he used to. So I don't think for the sake of a game, like most of the striking combinations in this league seem to be wee fast guys. I think the day the big man has sort of relatively gone now, the way a lot of teams play. You're looking at teams like Queen of the South, it's Derek Lyle and Riley and players like that. I think we're quite used to playing against two. Let's not forget Kenny Miller's not mobile anymore. He'd probably sort of struggle to outpace me these days. So I think that Clark's mobile and quick. Still hasn't scored a lot of goals this season. No,
it's just been an interesting one as an outsider coming to Hibs randomly throughout the season and seeing that thing of Hanlon setting up on the right, especially in a 4. In a 3 you notice it a wee bit less because it balances out a wee bit more, but in a 4 when you see Hanlon play on the right and he's so left footed, it's not a criticism, ultimately he gets away with it, but he is predominantly left footed. It's odd to see players play the wrong way around like that. John Terry's the only one that comes to mind really that naturally will always play left even though he's right footed, but that's just because he got stuck there because everyone else wanted to play right when he burst in the team. It's an odd thing to see them.
Well, Fontaine's a lefty as well.
But he just looks less like a left, if you know what I mean. He looks more a balanced player, whereas you just see Hanlon as constantly that left side. I just wondered if he might be more comfortable, narrowing that gap at the front post kind of thing where Rangers attacking. But ultimately it's quite a small debate to get too tied down in. So, right, so the rest of the team, Craig, what are your thoughts? That obviously the thoughts go to the midfield, the central midfield and the striking options, because the rest kind of picks itself. We'll probably get into a wee discussion about squad rotation as well, but there are a few positions that, as we've touched on, unfortunately just there's no scope to rotate them really. But there is scope in the centre midfield and up front. Is there any kind of horses for courses thing at Ibrox for you? Connor mentioned that he would favour Craig for this away game at Ibrox. Are you in on that mode?
That is pretty much the team that Connor's picked is the team that I've picked. I'd be more than comfortable with that side. Maybe the only change that I would make, depending on how he's looked in training, would be El Alagui for Malonga.
That was the one I was going to say. It's interesting that no one had him,
but that's only because I think that he would be better. If the Rangers centre halves want to try and rough us up a wee bit, I think that Farid can cope with that more than Malonga would, especially with I'm not saying he was roughed up against Hearts, but when Farid and Cummins played together in the derby, El Alagui was constantly talking to Jason Cummins. He was always, if he'd done something well, he was giving him a thumbs up. If he'd maybe messed up, he was telling him to keep his head up. When he went off subbed, he ran over to him, he shook his hand, gave him a cuddle and whatnot. So I think it's, for me, if McCulloch's playing, which I don't think will, because he was completely dropped for the squad yesterday, but if
I think he's injured, to be fair, still, because he was certainly injured for the first leg of the playoff tie against Queens.
Oh, right, okay.
Because both him and Mosney were injured, and that's what we were laughing about last week. Was McCall's idea of we got some bad news because both Mosney and McCulloch pulled up injured. Like, for who is that bad news?
But no, I think that that would, and it would be unfair on Malonga because since he's came back into the side, he had a good game away at Falkirk, and got himself a goal. But I think for this type of game, with what's riding on it, I think that the Rangers will try and rough them up a wee bit. And especially if you look at it where the strikers would play, if Cummins is going to be on the left, he's more likely to be up against McGregor, who's not so much a hatchet man. But on the left hand side, you've got our old pal Zaliukas, who's prone to putting a wee
agricultural defender.
Leaving his foot in, shall we say. And I think that Malonga would shrink if that happened to him, but Farid would be like, no, he'll just go back and hit him twice as hard.
Well, it's interesting because my consideration, there were two that stuck out to me in your team, Connor. One being Liam Craig, but I think that it does make sense in that he's a little bit more of a balanced, kind of slightly more defensive option rather than Fivey, who is potentially going to try and do similar things to Scott Allen at points in the game. And it makes sense for Craig there to give a little bit of balance in that central midfield. The Malonga one is the one that surprises me most, I have to say, because from an outsider's perspective, looking at this game, what you're probably looking for, as I think Craig's mentioned a wee bit there, is kind of tactical discipline and mentality and an element of character. But I sometimes think character's overplayed, because if you're good enough, then the character comes along with it. If you're having an easy time of it, you don't really have to have that much character. But I do think that if you're talking about a game where you have to keep it tight and you need presence at defensive set pieces and things like that, I can see that you could really task El Alagui to go out and do that job for the team. Why did you err on the side of Malonga?
I just think, well, just for a couple of reasons. I'm thinking mostly about squad rotation, as I said, but I just think Malonga had some really good games in previous trips to Ibrox this year. I think he's quite a clever player and almost kind of so clever in the way he plays. He almost went unnoticed on a couple of occasions before scoring or setting up goals before, and I think he's been a lot better recently. Had a couple of brilliant games after his debacle at the Easter Road derby. But I was also thinking as well, if things aren't going to plan, Alleghe would be an excellent substitution, which I don't think I think probably JJ is out of the picture more or less now, unless someone gets injured. So I was thinking, if things are going wrong and we do need to change things up a bit, I think bringing Alleghe on after 70 minutes or so is going to be far more effective than bringing Malonga on.
Right.
I think he's more of a dead loss as a substitute, to be honest. I think if you're going to play
that's certainly it's fair. So you're thinking essentially that it sets you up with a kind of 12-man team with El Alleghe contributing off the bench, whereas you restrict yourself to the 11 men if you
I think that gives you scope to change the game in a positive fashion, where, like you said, I can't remember Cummins coming on, Malonga coming on, having much of an impact on a match from the bench.
I think he scored against Livingston, and that was it, against 10 men.
He kind of still looked a bit ropey when he was playing that match, but since he's been starting again, the other thing with Alleghe is he's just not played that well since he came back. Like, he scored in the derby match.
He played well in the derby.
He put a couple of good shifts in, but you still thought he looked better at the start of the season.
I think the derby game took it out of him.
He still hadn't quite recovered from his injury.
I think we put a lot of pressure on him to get back in the side really quick after one good match in the derby, and it's been too early, and I think that Malonga's taken the chance. I think he deserves to start, and I think, like Connor's alluded to, I think we have more of an ability to change the way we play, and if we bring Alleghe on, I think that's one of the reasons I'd like to play a back four as well, is that if we bring Alleghe on, we can change the shape of the team completely and get the wide players further up the park to take advantage of that if we feel it's appropriate. I think he's only going to come on if we feel we need to push the game a bit more, and that means we're going to want to bring the fullbacks up the park a bit more, and that's one of the reasons I would prefer to play a back four, because it gives us that wee bit of structure and solidity, and if we want to change it up, we can completely change it up. Whereas if we start with bringing Alleghe on, but we're playing a 3-5-2 and we change to a 4-4-2, does it get the best out of him when you bring him on? So I would agree with starting those two guys up front, but I would personally go with a back four and then bring Fivey in to the midfield, alongside Craig, Allen at the top of the diamond and Robertson at the bottom of it, and change if necessary from there, because I think it gives us, I think the players in that are more disciplined enough to go and support the fullbacks. They start to get overloaded, which I don't think the shape of a 3-5-2 helps us do that in any way, other than bringing central defenders out from the middle, when you've got leaving a 2 against 2, basically 2 strikers against 2 centre halves.
Okay, well, we'll pause that specific debate for the moment, because I think we might come back to it when we get onto the tie at Easter Road as well. There may be a very similar conversation to have there. Just as we round up on Wednesday night's game, there was a couple of other points, Mikey, that you brought up that you wanted to discuss, one of which is the choice of referee. What were your thoughts?
I've got a huge opinion. I just thought it'd be noteworthy, given that everyone thinks there's going to be some kind of collusion.
I'll be Craig Thompson on Sunday or Saturday.
That'll be the prize jumping out the birthday cake on Saturday morning.
So it's Callum Murray on Wednesday.
Yeah, but he's one of the more competent and sort of solid.
Well, it introduces the whole,
is he not?
And it introduces the whole idea that he is a Jambo. Callum Murray, he was a season ticket holder. He travelled. There's a lot of Jambos know him, but he's one of those Jambos who you will struggle to find a Hearts fan who has a good word to say about him as a referee, because we always felt, and I think to be fair with justification, that he overcompensated, where he was wary of the reputation, the fact that he was a well-known Jambo, got to referee Hearts and decided I can't possibly ever give anything contentious to Hearts because my reputation will be in tatters.
Well coached by Craig Thompson.
So erred on the side of caution, overly so it does introduce the funny thing here, in that if you wanted to speculate about where his bias would fall, well, most Hearts fans actually want Hibs to win this. So it's an interesting thing. If he does give a dodgy decision, we'll have to see how exactly the bias can be utilised to justify the decision making.
I'm sure we can work it into some sort of like Hearts being part of the establishment. I'm sure we can figure something out.
Do you have any concerns over the referee? If we were managers, we'd be saying right now, this game needs a strong referee, but Do you think it'll get? Do you have concerns that there is any, without going into Celtic conspiracies, do you think the referees are going into this thinking anything about the establishment club?
No, I think that, like you say, Callum Murray seems to be one of the more competent referees. I think that,
just to be fair, I never said that. Mikey said that. I'll be getting crucified.
So I think that he's, you know, if I try and think of games that he's refereed with Hibs, I'm sure he was the ref when Riordan scored the penalty at Tynecastle, and the fans tried to run on and take him out when he was bundled over by Karapidis. It was a 50-50, but he still gave it in Hibs' favour. I think that he's
laddie, great laddie.
I think he's one of the ones who'll he'll not let like the crowd get on top of him. He'll just let the game flow. He doesn't seem somebody who sort of starts the game. He'll stop it if he has to, but he seems to be one of the ones that just likes to let the game flow. So no, I've not got any concerns about the ref.
Does the retirement element come into it? I'm thinking more in a positive sense than anything else, in that he's not worried about how he's being rated by the overseer in the stand, where a lot of referees seem to referee with two voices in their head, one of their own, which sometimes includes common sense, and the other of what they're being marked as, and ultimately that's what ends up overruling every bit of common sense. Does it maybe help this that he can just ultimately referee it as he sees, because he's not worried about being on the FIFA list next season?
I think so. You would hope, and it's one of these things that, we all talk about, the referees being biased and this and that, and you can never prove anything, but more so than ever you'd hope that he's just going to referee the game as he sees it right in front of him there and then, regardless of the context of it, how important it is to certain elements of Scottish football beyond just Rangers FC. So I think that it's important that I think that we're going to get somebody just kind of reffing the match as it appears in front of us. If there's any mistakes, you're just going to have to hope that it's just like the guy's made a mistake. But I don't think that it's not an appointment that worries me. I see it costing us. Better bloody not.
just remind our players to play to the whistle, because the last time at Easter Road we kind of dropped everything, and that these things happen. It's not necessarily a referee's bias or anything. It's just sometimes Rangers can be quite a cynical team, and we need to bear that in mind. If there are sort of elbows flying or whatnot, bad tackles, to play to the whistle and then stop to complain,
especially if Willie Collum gets the game at the weekend. Be aware there will be at least a couple of clangers.
Depending on the result, you might see a certain Andrew Dallas get the game on.
Willie Collum's in the cup final on the Saturday,
but then the cup finals, that's the week after. That's the Motherwell game. Okay, final points on Ibrox then. The general lack of Hibs supporters there. Craig, you've got that wee smug look on your face that says you will be one of them. Is there a consideration though about the fact that there's only going to be 900 Hibs fans there, and based on the pricing it's likely that we'll see a full house at Ibrox?
No, I think if anything it'll sort of galvanise the Hibs support, because that's a lot of talk around, you would say, around UK football is the fact that your most loyal and your hardcore element of supporters are your away fans. Because they
he
go.
Says knowing he's got a ticket.
Says the man who's been about 5 games.
In terms of being sort of a vocal, not in being like they're the most loyal, but they're the ones that, because they go every week,
their voice heard.
They get their voice heard, and I think that'll sort of galvanise us in a way that there's only 950 of us, but you're all going to have to join in if you want to keep us quiet, because we're not going to be quiet for the full 90 minutes. I would have liked to have understand why Rangers only gave us 950 if that's the bare minimum that we should get, because obviously they want more of their own fans. Different point, I would have liked to seen Dempster give Rangers the same percentages that we get, that we've got at Ibrox, but that's a story for another day.
And the segregation would come into consideration there.
I think the 1200's a fair slap down to them, a fair kind of sort of 2 fingers up to them, while still being reasonable and realistic.
It's probably only
you'd get into the realms of people getting at the wrong side of the stadium and stuff like that.
It's the only logical way to instantly reduce their allocation. But we'll get on to Saturday in a wee bit. So you're confident that the 950 fans will still have the same influence that they would have had if there were 3,500, or is there a slight disadvantage as a result?
We would have, obviously, the more you've got, the more vocal you can be. But
do you think it actually, this is a much bigger debate, but just to try and boil it down in kind of 2 minutes, do you think it has an impact on the park in these kind of games? Do you think the players are tuned into what's going on in the stands to a huge
well, I don't
extent?
know, 'cause you hear footballers saying, I'll just pay attention to what's on the park, and then they moan when it's, they start like, I can hear the fans getting on my back and I didn't like it. I think if, it's folk use the expression, if you're at your work and somebody's shouting at your rubbish, you're not going to do your job any better. That's that's a completely different scenario. I think if your back's to the wall, if Rangers are at us first 15-20 minutes and they get a break, for whatever, it's a throw-in or whatever, and then all they hear is just a chant for the Hibs end, that'll give them a sort of, it's a, we're not here ourselves. We've got 90, 950, whatever, they're here with us as well. So I don't think it makes as much of an impact as a negative sort of soundbite for fans do. But no, I do think it does have an impact.
Connor, doubling back slightly to the tactical debate, can it work in Hibs' favour that they are vastly outnumbered, that we're going to have a full 50,000, which or likely to have a full 50,000, which instantly suggests that there are about 25,000 people in that Rangers end who haven't been there the rest of the games, and if it starts to go iffy for them, you wouldn't think we'll hang about in showing their displeasure and voicing the fact that this is why I've not been here in the previous 18 or 19 games this season.
No, I think these our allocation is a real shame for a lot of Hibs fans who want to go, but I think it's just daft mind games from Rangers that will hopefully blow up on their faces, because you heard it yesterday, as I said already, they were booing their team off the pitch at half time because they were drawing on aggregate, and you get the feeling that the loyal fans that have been there all season are obviously the minority if it is a sellout, as you say, and 50,000 people getting on your back is going to affect you a lot more than potentially not having as many of your own fans there, I think. So let's hope it does backfire on them, especially if we start to sort of test their patience and the fans, because some of the seethe from the Rangers fans this year at Ibrox has been unbelievable. I think it was
phenomenal.
It's
glorious.
Absolutely. Cummins' goal at Ibrox at the start of the year, the boo is so loud, it almost drowns out the commentators, and that's just like, we want to get a situation like that on the go again, where just because they've got twice as many fans there's twice as much harassment of their own team.
I don't think that the 950 Hibs fans is a problem. It's not affected us so far this season at Ibrox, and like you mentioned, there's either going to be, let's say, 20,000 of the 50 there are either going to be on that knife edge of like becoming immediately exasperated again, or they're going to be guys like children and people who don't go to the games, they've never been to see Rangers in big matches, like,
to the atmosphere.
They're not going to contribute anything other than like, can I go to the toilet, Dad?
If you read online as well, I think there's going to be a high, well, maybe not a high number, but a fair number of Hibs fans in the home end.
Okay, that's going to be a wild night.
That was my plan, if I couldn't get a ticket for the corner.
I was not trying to value my scarless face so far.
Yeah, having seen the scenes that played out of that snowed off game at Ibrox,
exactly. I think
and that was when segregation was in place. It's maybe not the greatest idea unless you can really hide your loyalties.
Squaddies going together, but I think I don't see 950 being a problem. I think that the fans will be as loud as they possibly can be. Realistically, the players are going to go out and still do the same job. Like, we were never going to get the whole like Copeland Road end like we'd had in the past. Was it the Broom one? One of the two. The Broom one. We're going to get that. That was not going to happen at the Scottish Cup match. There wasn't an obligation for Rangers to give us that. So if we'd got more, it was going to be 2,000, 2,500 rather than 950. Like, it's not that massive. It's not 6,000-7,000 away fans in that end, like putting a massive noise onto the park. So like I said, it's petty mind games off Rangers. I don't think that it's going to impact on the outcome but it might be that if we've been able to sort of play it to our advantage at Easter Road and reduce their capacity and increase our capacity a wee bit, it might have an effect. It's going to be the smallest, like let's say the Rangers will not have played in front of such a small Rangers support
for a very long time,
years.
To be fair, I think they did at Tynecastle on the final game of the season, because we only gave them 2 sections of the Roseburn as well, but certainly it was a new experience there. And it does if you look across at that section, mentally there is as a supporter, there's an element of inspiration there in terms of the club have set the tone here. You know, we've now got to live up to this.
Absolutely.
There's an element of we have to sell the tickets, because we can't put them in half a stadium and leave the other half empty. So it does, you know, it should issue a rallying cry in that respect. And then when you see half of them, there is that wee boost of we have to outsing them, we have to be completely up for it. Absolutely. They cannot be heard given their lack of support. Craig, one final point on this game before I ask you for scorelines for the first leg. Did you get your ticket for a $5 then?
Aye.
You did? Right, okay. Which is arguably why they've gone with a $9.50 then.
You sent your poor old granddad out in the rain to get a ticket for you.
And you only gave him £3. Unbelievable.
No, yeah, I'm squaring them up tomorrow.
Okay, I hope you give him a wee bit extra on top for going.
I'm still due 90 quid for the Falkirk tickets, so.
Okay, let's get the scores from you then. Mikey, what is your expectation of the scoreline on Wednesday night?
1 each.
Connor?
I was going to say 1 each too, but I'll be a bit more positive.
Just validate what I think.
2-1 Hibs. I meant to mention earlier, I think Scott Allen's going to have a brilliant game. I think he's going to run the show again, a bit like he did in the semi-final, and I think he's going to be really influential. 2-1 Hibs.
Okay. Craig? You've had like an hour and 5 minutes to think about this. 2-0 Hibs.
Yep.
Right, okay.
If El Alagui starts, 2-0 Hibs. If Malonga starts, I'll go for 1-0.
Okay, so no one has Hibs losing this first leg though, which ultimately I think we've all also agreed puts Hibs in a position of strength, which sounds like it comes with the territory, but some teams, for instance, Hibs at home last season, had they drew at Hamilton, you would have said that was a better result for Hamilton than Hibs.
Yeah, absolutely.
As it was, Hibs won away, and then obviously because things were so negative, Easter Road still conspired to lose it. So the fact that even a draw we are looking at as a positive result is actually a statement of intent in terms of how Hibs have come on in the last year anyway. Let's look at the game then. How much of the team that Alan Stubbs picks will be influenced by the result on Wednesday night, or do you think ultimately it's a case of putting your best team on the park no matter what?
No, because you've also got to second guess the impact of the result on the side that Rangers are going to select. So it's just going to be kind of guesswork and second guessing Stuart McCall and vice versa. So I think that.
Do you think Alan Stubbs will care? Like without being weird about it, the fact is that Alan Stubbs seems to have an element of bravado, and that he does have a lot of confidence in his own team. Yes, it would be naive of him not to consider the Rangers element of it at all, but is there an element to say that he shouldn't bother, that he should ultimately go, we're the home team, let's go out and dictate the tempo for the first 20 minutes?
I think if we go to Ibrox and lose 2-0, you can't put the same team out at Easter Road on the Saturday as if we've got a 1-1 draw. So I think that the result on Wednesday is going to play a huge part in Saturday's team selection, partly because of how we have to approach the game depending on what we need from it, but also because Rangers will react to it as well. They might start with three strikers in the park, they might start with one up front if they get a result at Ibrox. So I think that
I think that Alan Stubbs will fancy himself in that kind of face-off though, because in the big games this season, even looking at it from a Hearts perspective, Alan Stubbs generally, you could argue, won the tactical battle more often than he lost it. So in theory he could look at that and say ultimately we'll try and get the best out of our best players and forget about it.
It's slightly different when in the context of a league season, when you're trying to get 3 points rather than a specific result. To win 1-0, 2-0, get a 0-0 draw, whatever it might be. So I think it's slightly different in that front. Like under Stubbs has not played a 2-legged match, where you've got to kind of be quite sort of, get your chest head on a wee bit. So yeah, you could go out and just go, we're going to play 3-5-2, we're going to do it, and we're going to dominate, we're going to play the way we always play. Rangers kind of psyched us out last time at Easter Road by we just set up how we always set up, and they they outmanoeuvred us in that sense and did something different. So he's got to bear that in mind and think, well, you know, Rangers aren't as one-dimensional as they sort of hinted towards for 30 games of the season. So he will have an idea of how he wants to play dependent on maybe 2 or 3 different outcomes on Wednesday night, but I do think the result on Wednesday is going to be enormously important to how and who plays on the Saturday. Like, it might be a game that like El Agui has to start. It might be that we get, say if we go to Ibrox and win 1-0, 2-1, you go, well, maybe El Agui has to start and we keep the ball and we put the pressure on their defenders from the first moment to make mistakes and lose possession and don't let them settle. So like, we control the tempo and things like that. So there's a lot to consider, but I do honestly think that it's too hard to predict until we know what happens on Wednesday. And I think that I get where you're coming from 100%, but I think that as much as he's got this bravado, he's also got, this is the biggest call of my career so far. Like, this one selection could make or break my career, and I'm not going to be the big man to try and prove a point if I can put a team out that I know will defend a 1-0 lead or whatever it might be.
Connor, carrying on from Mikey's point there, Robbie Neilson was criticised a few times in this studio over the course of the season about essentially overthinking the big games. You know, when the chips were down and the focus was on, that he seemed to overly concern himself with what the opposition were doing or try and be a wee bit too clever with springing surprises and things like that. Is there a concern that Alan Stubbs could be drawn into the same thing because of the enormity of it? Because if you did spring a surprise that worked, that could be the difference in getting you into the next round. Is there a worry that he maybe is, that he could be caught into a trap of overthinking it?
I guess with the amount of time he's had in his hands and the amount of punditry he's been doing for Rangers games recently as well, he's had a lot of time to watch them. But I think you know, we mentioned earlier that we need to forget about what happened last time at Easter Road, but that defeat might have come just at the right time, because ultimately we finished second anyway. I think where we went wrong last time, as I said, was that we didn't play to our strengths, and I think that's what he'll have learned. That's the lesson he'll have learned from last time, is that what we need to do is play to our strengths. We don't need any surprises. We don't need any strange new formations. You know, he knows. I mean, ultimately it's up to him, but he knows that we've got 2 strong shapes which could be utilised at Ibrox, which has brought us success in the past. And I think he's just gonna play to his strengths in that fashion. In particular, you know, a lot of our key players are going to be well rested and up for it, and I don't expect that he's going to be sitting thinking of, you know, new things to try and catch Rangers out, because we've seen enough of them this season. They'll know them quite well by now.
We're also quite limited in personnel in certain areas, like you said beforehand, where we can't probably play about with it too much. There's maybe just sort of having an additional midfielder rather than a defender that's really going to be the massive change, and then changing one of the strikers up front. Cummins has to play both games really with the season he's had, so then you're looking at changing one of the 2. But I think there's only a certain amount we can really play about with on the personnel side of things, which then dictates towards the shape of the team. So I think that we'll not see anything totally different. It's just a case of which side of the coin he ends up going with.
This is where I think we'll miss Boyle. With the option to actually change it up quite a bit. You know, because if you look at the personnel we've got on the bench, you know, if we go with Craig, Robertson and Allen as the midfield, you know, on the bench you've got Fivey, McGeoch and Stanton, who are pretty much going to be like for like. You know, the only one that you could really have differently would be Danny Handlin, but then Danny Handlin doesn't, if we're going to go 3-5-2, Danny Handlin doesn't fit into that system. So I think not having Boyle, because Boyle can play, he could, you know, if push came to shove and we went 4 at the back, Boyle could play right mid. You know, Boyle could play wing back, he could go up front. You know, we've not got that versatility throughout the team, especially with his pace as well. You know, because if, you know, we've got, you know, Scott Allen can sort of just go past players, but he's not someone that's got breaking pace. You know, that he can, because that's how we got the Stevenson's goal at Ibrox. Was because
it's the kind of curveball that you're talking about, that ability just to throw something completely different into the mix. Whereas Rangers can do that by just bringing Billy Elmosney on. Just instantly watch the game descend into chaos.
I enjoyed his cameo appearance yesterday. Actually, that was
that 45 yard left foot raker was a wee bit special.
Especially when they pan to McCall on the bench, just tearing his hair out. Like, what the hell? Like, you know, it'd be nice if he does something similar on Wednesday.
Apparently, even when McCall shook his hand at the end of the game, he was still swearing in his face. Craig, on the basis of your curveball, I'm going to throw you one back. What do you think Stubbs has been working on in La Manga for the last week? We mentioned a wee bit about, you know, the sun on their back and getting them away and a change of scenery and all those kind of things, but you would assume that there'd be an element of intensity at that training camp. Do you think the onus would have been on system work, shape work, make it topping up their fitness? What do you think would have been the focus of the training there?
I think it would have been, honestly, I probably couldn't tell you. I would think you would like to think it's a bit of everything. You know, they didn't need to do, you know, passing it across a field type drill, because that's, you know, that sort of stuff you do when you're sort of 10, 11 years old. You know, I would like to think that system stuff has been done with various different players as well. You know, seeing how we would, you know, looking at what Rangers have done over the season and trying to sort of figure out, you know, if Jordan Foster's injured, you know, so Keith Watson goes into centre back, right? What if David Gray gets injured? How do we then change it? Does Watson go to right back? You know, if Cummins is injured, because a lot of it's been Cummins and Malonga or Cummins and El Elagui, what if it's Cummins is the one that has to drop out? How do we work there? I think he's maybe, you know, because obviously this season we've went with the 3-5-2 or the diamond. I think he's probably worked on various different things. I think if there's going to be a curveball thrown on Wednesday night, I think it could be that Hibs go one up top somehow. I don't know if maybe Cummins would be moved out wide.
Okay.
With a central striker. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but I just if there's going to be a curveball thrown, I think it would be that we go with one up top and play instead of playing to win, just playing not to get beat.
Well, you could in theory even just utilise the 5 midfielders that we've been talking about trying to crowbar in, but then obviously you're looking at a couple of them playing sort of de facto wide, but then with the fullbacks you've got, I suppose there's not a huge, as we've seen throughout the season, there's not a huge requirement for wide midfielders, so you could have an extra kind of holding midfielder to cover gaps.
I think if we did that, I think that would give Rangers a psychological massive boost to see one striker in the park, because they're going like they're actually pandering to us. I hope we don't do it. Like, I'm not saying that that's what I want. No, absolutely. I just think that if there is going to be that sort of, you know, because out of nowhere, you know, Stubbs went with the 3-5-2 at Ibrox the first time and we hammered them, and then, you know, everybody was expecting 3-5-2 and he went with the diamond at Easter Road and we beat them 4-0. So I think that there's, if there is going to be a surprise thrown, and Stubbs seems to like a wee surprise every now and again.
I think most modern managers do, but the question mark, as I think we keep coming back to here, is whether it's required to beat this Rangers team. I think that's what it all comes back to. I don't think it is, because if this were two equal teams, we would be focusing far more on what curveball is the manager going to throw, what has the manager got in his locker to win this, and that's why you focus on guys like Mourinho, and because they can throw that one random player in that just somehow wins the game.
It's usually Mikel.
That's somehow.
Flip side is that, does he change it up and go 3 up top?
That's what I'm saying.
Like go 3 strikers up top against them, and like play a really high pressing game like we're talking about, and run the legs out of them by, you know, having 3 strikers up top against 4 defenders that are predominantly, apart from all, terrified of the ball at their feet. And then
Cummins, Malonga and Farid up top would be pretty.
It'd be enjoyable.
That team, like, I'd just be giving my ticket to someone else and going home. I don't think I could face watching 3 strikers.
But it's not out of the question in that
it rattles them though.
Going using Robbie Nielsen as the example of a fellow kind of tactician at this level. Nielsen went to Ibrox and decided in the snowed off game and decided to play Rangers at their own game and put Zeefuik and Patterson up front, and thought, well, if you're just going to pummel us for the game, then we'll just do the same to you and we'll see who comes out. In theory, you could do that. You could put 3 men up and say, well, we're going to be incredibly direct as well, and
see how you deal with it.
It's not as out of the question as it initially sounds. It is funny though, Connor, because we're focusing on Alan Stubbs looking at Rangers here, and he's had so long to watch Rangers and come up with a plan for Rangers, and in actual fact it's quite disrespectful to Queen of the South, because it was only 5:15 yesterday that we knew for definite it would be Rangers. Even then it's probably about 5:25 because Rangers were hanging on at 5:15. So with that in mind, it does actually present a real challenge for Alan Stubbs. Do you think that over the last week he has been preparing the team separately for Queen of the South or for Rangers, or do we think he put the eggs in the Rangers basket on the basis that the balance of probabilities would suggest it was going to be them? How do you think he would
He's probably
balance that?
quite relieved that it's not Queen of the South, to be honest, because the last time we played them, that was probably one of our worst performances of the year. Like, we were just completely nullified and really lacking in ideas. So I'm guessing that probably after the first leg he thought Rangers were gonna like crawl over the line. Obviously it was in doubt for much of yesterday, but I think just from the fact that they won the first leg, I think that that probably put the balance of probability that we were going to be playing Rangers. So I'm sure that's how Stubbs was thinking, and as I say, he does seem to do a lot of this punditry, so he'll have seen enough of them to sort of have the measure of them. I'm enjoying hearing some of these ideas for different sort of formations we could be playing, but I think that would smack of overthinking it if we started something completely brand new that we'd not done all season, especially at Ibrox.
I've heard he's been trying out the Levine 460.
Oh yes, that would be something new.
I suppose the concern as well when we're talking about Alan Stubbs thinking about these scenarios is that if you go with a tried and tested formations and worst case scenario they don't work, then it's a case of it just was never day or someone had an off day. If you throw the 460 is the perfect example. If you throw in a formation that in other scenarios, as we've seen since, does work, in theory it can, but if you throw it in an unexpected scenario and it doesn't work, you can look quite stupid. So thinking purely about his own reputation, he may err on the side of caution. Even if he does think he has something that might work, you'd have to be a brave man to actually implement it in these games, because really you can only suffer.
You're setting yourself up for a fall there, especially in a two-legged game. If you somehow blew it in the first match, it would be absolutely kicking yourself, and when it came to the Saturday, and if it was a draw or something, then
if anything, you almost want to set the team up to make Saturday the day where whatever he decides truly dictates the outcome. So I don't think we've got the players to play for a draw, but set up the side in a fashion that goes, right, I'm going to really show what I'm all about and show my worth as a manager on Saturday with the team that I put out. So I think that is probably the key part to Wednesday's selection, is putting a team out that puts us in a position to have a game on Saturday that we can influence and kind of sort of keep the outcome in our own hands.
Well, that's the real telling point, I think, in terms of Wednesday's game, is that Rangers are a team that you can set up against, where in theory you could actually go through a game and fashion 0 chances yourself and still win, because you are so confident that they will have 2 or 3 brain farts at the back. As long as you capitalise on those, you don't actually have to have created anything yourself, really. And we saw that at Queen of the South to an extent, with Derek Lyle, who's not tall, scored 2 headers, the first completely unchallenged in the game in Dumfries. Ultimately, Queen of the South actually were fairly poor by their own standards, I think, over the 2 legs there, but we're still in the game because they just capitalised on Rangers' deficiencies. So as we start to round it up, then put into perspective for me, before we go with final scores and what the results are going to be and that kind of thing, put into perspective for me how big this game is for any non-Hibbies that listen to this show, and there are quite a few. Obviously there's a lot of the Jambo persuasion, but there's a lot of people from outside both camps listen to this. How does this compare to the cup finals over the last few years? Where does this sit?
I think it's more important because the idea of another season in the Championship is just incredibly unappealing. It's been a decent season, and it's been a much better season to be a Hibs fan, apart from the first quarter, and I think that's the main thing that we've gained this season. It's been enjoyable to go Easter Road again and get behind a team, have players that we like, have a manager that we trust, and you get the feeling that a lot of that good work would be deflated if we fell at the final hurdle, particularly because we finished second, because that looked out of reach for a lot of the early part of the season. That looked like that had been and gone, and we managed to sort of exceed ourselves and sort of finish higher than Rangers. So it would be a shame to see a lot of that good work deflated through, a couple of dodgy performances in the playoffs. So I think that's a big part of it. I think with Hibs, we're not so much thinking about transfers for next season as we are thinking, who are we going to lose if we don't go up? Because then it's another rebuilding job, and that's also a big problem. But the media don't seem to be talking about Hibs too much. It seems to be Rangers versus Motherwell seems to be the fixture they're all talking about.
Jonathan Sutherland said that on Twitter yesterday, pretty much straight after the final whistle. He went, so is it like written in the stars or something? It'll be Stuart McCall's Motherwell versus Stuart McCall's Rangers, and I had to put my phone down.
I think that works in our favour, though. If that's how people are going to be approaching the game.
But that's how it's always been with the old firm, Rangers or Celtic. It's never about us. It's
to
always
be fair,
about them.
is that mainly outside the Rangers camp? And that a lot of people yes, there are hugely deluded characters within the Rangers camp, not necessarily within the squad.
Kenny Miller being one of them.
Well, sort of within the squad, but there's if you read that, whatever the fans group were that wrote the letter for Stuart McCall to read to the players, and there is an element of delusion that we will never encounter in Edinburgh, no matter what, because quite simply we're never going to have a rule of the roost long enough to develop that kind of delusion. The most successful club in Europe and all that kind of stuff. With that in mind, though, I do wonder if the idea of taking Hibs lightly is actually more the general media malaise that comes into this about, Rangers are the big story here, so we'll focus our attention on them. I would be very, very surprised if Stuart McCall was letting anyone in that dressing room operate under the illusion that this isn't going to be a more difficult game than the Motherwell games.
No, absolutely. I think you're looking at the fact that that whole Rangers squad has lost to Hibs on multiple times this season. There's part of the Newcastle contingent, nothing came in January, and only one or two of them have made an appearance. So it's the same group of players that have been leathered twice and beaten again on a third occasion, and every one of them can read the league table and see that we finished above them in the end, not comfortably, but it didn't come down to goal difference or anything. We finished above them, full stop. So as much as everyone's questioning their talent and whatnot, they're all professionals, they're all pros, and I think that they're going to approach the game going, well, they're as good a side as us, we need to go out and lift our game and raise our game. So I don't think there's going to be any complacency amongst their squad and amongst their coaching staff, because every one of their coaching staff up till Stuart McCall had combined to continually not beat us. So I don't think there's going to be any prospect that group of players and staff approaching it in a sort of complacent fashion. Like I said, it is just the outside circles and your Chick Youngs and all these Muppets. I was going to use another word there, but I'll go Muppets. Just because they can't wait for that Old Firm week, that Monday morning before the first Old Firm game, and it's back, and they can't comprehend that it's not going to happen next season.
There'll be a 16-team league if that's the case, isn't it? Is that not the latest plan?
Well, that's what
another discussion.
As always, they'll manage to turn this against things that 3 weeks ago we were supporting, because they'll be done purely on the basis of helping the Old Firm.
I disagree with that, purely based on the fact that yesterday, watching the BT Sport coverage, they'd done an interview with Kenny Miller, and they were giving it, what does this club mean to you, blah blah blah, and he's like, we're still Rangers, we're still the big fish, when people come to us, they raise their game, they do this, they do that. So for me, that sort of old mentality still exists with them, and they think that we're Rangers, we should be, some of them, like Andy Gorham was on Sky Sports News today saying, when Rangers get promoted, I hope they don't get embarrassed against Celtic. I hope they can still maintain a challenge. So I mean, they couldn't even challenge Hibs and Hearts. They couldn't get anywhere near Hearts this season. So what makes them think that they're suddenly, is Mr. Davey going to get his war chest open? It's still the same sort of delusions that factor in for former players. And for what I seen yesterday for Kenny Miller would be current players. The only one that I see who actually probably has a bit of respect and a bit of his head about him with regards to stuff about Rangers would probably be Stuart McCall. I think he's the only one who, I thought he let himself down a wee bit with his comments regarding Queen of the South and their blocking at corners and their tactics at corners. But apart from that, he's been pretty, he's no dished the dirt on anybody. He's no said anything sort of out of touch that maybe, Lawnmower Alley would have said.
That came into sharp focus when he congratulated Hearts on their title win instantly as the first words in his press conference, that he did think, as a Rangers manager, if you were a Rangers supporter, God forbid, you're not really sure how you would react to that. In actual fact, it was a weird kind of normal human face on the monster that is Glasgow Rangers or the Rangers.
I'm sure it'll be turned over time. He's still been out of it.
But I do think at the moment
he still is one of them.
But I think, as we've said, with Rangers doing the Guard of Honour and things like that, I think he's very aware of that. He's stage managing that. Don't get me wrong, I think Stuart McCall probably is quite a nice guy in comparative terms to most of the players that he played with in that Rangers team. But I do think that at the moment he realises that it's not necessarily a bad thing for him to be seen as the likeable face of Rangers.
Well, he's been watching it from afar for a while now. He's probably been quite aghast at what he's seen, and he's been able to plan his. You'd expect he knew he was going to get that job eventually.
Partly that, and partly the fact that it does add, or it can add 10, 15, 20% to performances and to the reaction of fans and things like that when there is the true venom about that real despising of the club, and that generally is part and parcel of being an away team at Ibrox or Rangers visiting. Whereas if the manager puts that face on it, it can in theory soften that a wee bit and just take the sting out ties a little bit. And I do think that he's maybe actually managed that there now appears to be, don't get me wrong, people still laugh at Rangers and everything, but there is slightly less venom than there has been at points in terms of that entitlement. That's why Kenny Miller's comments, as always, are probably completely ill-judged in terms of their timing, and it does stoke that sense of entitlement debate up again, whereas McCall is coming out and saying, like beating Queen of the South by a goal on aggregate is a great result. I mean, for no one at Rangers is that really a great result, but he does have a sense of perspective that no one else has had. It's going to be interesting to see how that is challenged in these games where in theory the sense of entitlement can really come back in with Rangers, because ultimately that's when it's under this intense pressure is when we will see what he's really like, and we'll see if there is going to be any, if the mask is going to slip, then maybe it'll be this week. It would be nice to see. Right, so let's kind of round up on the games then. What can anyone in this room see Hibs not progressing to the final?
I think also you can see it.
So it's a possible outcome.
You can see it happening, but for me, for the way that we've having the first leg at Ibrox is the factor for me. For me, that in my head somehow that means that we'll go through. Just being able to play away from home the first leg, knowing what we have to do at home, is a big factor for me. I can't see us not going on to face Motherwell. Okay, in all of your hearts, Hibs win this tie. Is that correct? In your heads, the Hibs win it. Win away, draw at home.
I think one at Ibrox, 2-0 at Easter Road. I've thought that for a few weeks.
Connor?
Yeah, I do have a good feeling that we've got, especially with this break, unless we've approached this break to Spain completely incorrectly. I think Stubbs will have set it up just right. I think the players will be coming back full of energy, and for reasons we've said earlier, I think the momentum's going to be on our side.
But we've won 5 league games in a row. We lost the Scottish Cup semi-final where we played really well. We're not playing badly. We're not coming into this in a low ebb. Rangers are the ones who came into this falling, staggering like a drunk man over the finish line, and losing the second place they had regained off us.
The really important and fascinating thing I think about what you've said there is, even in the game where you got the bloody nose, even in the game where it didn't go the way you wanted, which was a semi-final, you still only lost 1-0, which in the context of a 2-legged affair, that's alright. We can come back for that. So that's a big thing, is that Hibs have shown recently that even when it doesn't happen for them, they're not going to capitulate and lose by 3, because that's how you lose a tie like this.
Mentality is gone. Yeah, absolutely. I think that type of person appears to be gone from the club. Where those results would happen, like that 2-0 at home to Hamilton last season. This group of players, I don't think could become like capable of tolerating that kind of capitulation at home in that kind of game.
Connor's score minute,
sorry,
just uncomfortable.
when Mikey says capitulation, I've just got a picture of Ryan McGivern in my head, and I'm the last man I wanted to be thinking about.
But talking about capitulation and all the mental side of it, from this side, it's a game that in the context of the season it will likely be looked back on as it was unimportant, the league title was completely over. But in the context of this playoffs, the Hearts Rangers final game of the season could actually be quite a big thing here, in that Hearts proved that day that even when in theory Hearts shouldn't have been that bothered and they didn't have anything to play for, even in those circumstances Rangers were still susceptible. In the last 10-15 minutes of a game, when they had pressed high up the park, they had expended a lot of nervous energy, and ultimately they were burst in the last 10 minutes and Hearts were able to capitalise. If worst case scenario Hibs do go 1 goal or even 2 goals down, that I would hope that Alan Stubbs has emphasised that element to him, in that they will make mistakes, but also they will tire, and they've not got the kind of character that we're talking about Hibs having now, where you'll sit there and you would still, I think all of us would still say in the last 10 minutes Hibs can still win this from here, not necessarily on the night, but over the tie. If Hibs go 2-0 up after half an hour, I don't think any of us will say they could still possibly lose it from here. I think we'll assume it's game over unless they get incredibly laid back.
I think the Ibrox fire drill would be
but that's definitely what shows you at that stage that I think if you look at it logically, this is in Hibs' favour. Hibs are the favourites here, in that you paint all these different scenarios and you say I could still see Hibs winning from there, I can't see Rangers. And the only real way you can see Rangers winning, I think, is probably if they get a substantial enough lead from Ibrox, which is when it all comes down to what happens on Wednesday night and how Hibs react from there.
I agree. I think unless things go bad,
anything more than a two goal deficit and Rangers are through. I think if Rangers can win by 2 goals at Ibrox, that's it, tie over.
Do you think so?
I don't think it 2. I think it's 3 at the goes.
Purely because I think if Rangers bring a 2-0 lead to Easter Road, you'll know have a big crowd back in Hibs. If it's 1 goal,
so it's more the psychological blow to the support.
Come on, Craig. If Alloa can do it against Forfar, then surely we have to pull it off.
Well, to be fair, I mean, Alloa did it against Rangers.
That's true.
You know, it's you don't even have to look at the Hearts example. You can look at numerous different examples of, yes, Rangers have come back in the odd game. They did it against Falkirk, but really they've not really shown that they can do it against a good side, that they've got that element of character, whereas a lot poorer clubs than Hibs have come back against this Rangers team because they are fragile.
I think it's more going from what Hibs fans have suffered from in the past rather than anything else. I just think
the good thing is the majority of the players in that Hibs team, the players haven't suffered the nonsense that we've suffered over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and they're not affected by it. And even the guys that have been are playing better than they ever have. You know, guys like Hanlon, like he's like a different player now, lower level, but confidence wise that has probably raised him up a level from where he's ever been. And I think that's, to me, it's the most important part, is that the players don't carry that burden into these matches, and we've got better characters throughout the side, guys like Fontaine and Gray and El Agui, or even players like Malonga, who it probably just doesn't affect in the slightest. He's not even aware of the result.
You look at the type of player that Cummins was at the end of last season, and you look at the type of player he is now. His whole aura, if you want to call it that, is just so night and day. Like if we had to go to penalties, like last season when it went to penalties and he stepped up, I just laptop shut, we're out, we're done. But if he was to step up now, I'd be fairly confident that if it was to seal it, he will rifle it in the top corner. So I think even the character of Cummins is it's completely different from what it was last season.
That in itself, though, is a really interesting point that you've raised. The idea of last season's setup, the whole thing of last season's playoff was you could only lose it. And that even if you won, oh great, well done, you've done the absolute bare minimum that could have been achieved this season. Whereas this season, it's the glory. If Jason Cummings steps up, it's no the fear of letting the side down. Yes, there is an element of that, but as we've said, that fear is not as strong for Hibs as it is for Rangers, because they've got the financial calamity that would come with it. Whereas you can imagine guys like Cummings, you know, the cocky wee guy that he is, stepping up and thinking, I'm going to be the man whose name is associated with this triumph for years to come.
I think it's like, as I said in the show before, this year we're all hoping that something happens, whereas the last few years at Hibs it's been like hoping something that doesn't happen, and that's such a negative way of just hope this doesn't happen, I hope the season's finished and stuff. Whereas, you know, this year we're wanting something, and that makes all the difference for the team.
On that point, are we excited for these games? Is it genuine excitement and anticipation? Is there anything of, you know, if I could click my fingers and be next Sunday and just know the results, I would do it?
I think it's different now. We know the outcome of the previous round. I think that's part of the reason why ticket sales haven't been flying out as much, because there's been that question mark over who we're playing. It's now 2 days away, so like it is, there's much more of an excitement and anticipation towards it. There still was a million more question marks up until, like you say, 5:30 yesterday. So I think now we're talking about it, we've spent the last hour and a bit talking about it, it's like game on.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not nervous at all, and I think the fact that this year, you know, they are becoming like the flagship games almost before the Scottish Cup final was like, you know, the playoffs are becoming really exciting to neutrals as well, and I know that everyone in Scotland's sort of talking about it, and it's a chance for Hibs to, you know, last year we were a complete laughingstock in the playoffs. It's a chance for us to play really well and show
recover an element of like our kind of reputation from being a laughingstock.
Stop people going on about, you know, doing a Hibs as an adjective, because I'm getting a bit tired of that every time I listen to the radio.
I'm hoping that Motherwell do a Hibs.
Yeah, exactly. And doing a Hibs will be like, you know, when you win promotion, you know, that'll be the new doing the Hibs. We'll change that little idiom.
It's certainly a noble cause to dedicate all of this towards, but it is true. It's a horrible experience to have your club name attached to any kind of negative connotation in the game, and for years we've experienced it on the other half of the city as well, you know, with the chaotic circumstances, and it has been that idea of, you never know what Hearts team's going to turn up, and that was the only real time that you heard us mention. Equally of Hibs, there is this idea of, they've Hibsed it, you know, that is you can laugh it off as much as you want. That hurts, that kind of thing, because it does sully the club's name a wee bit. It's a bit embarrassing, and obviously I think it maybe need to be a wee bit more prolonged success to completely kill off those kind of things, but the next couple of weeks are a big opportunity to turn things like that around and show that, and then you can legitimately laugh them off in terms of that was old Hibs.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, just like Hearts fans will be reacting this season to, but this is a new team who actually, you know, that whole administration period and getting humped left, right and centre has gone now. Hearts have put that to bed. Hibs now have the opportunity to put their side of things to bed now as well. This is
exciting.
huge.
It's something to look forward to.
Big. I think that it's probably been underplayed so far how big this is. Again, we've said that we don't necessarily have to go up this season, and I'm sure that on day one of the season I don't think that any of the directors sat there and went, if we don't go up this season we're absolutely snookered. Like, we've put ourselves in a position where we can get ourselves out of this league at the first opportunity. Like, that possibility still exists. I think that we're sitting here thinking, if at the end of the season, on day one of the season, if we got told that we'd finish above Rangers this season, you'd think we're up. Like, and Hearts would have thought the same as well. Yous have done it. I think if both the Edinburgh sides got offered at the start of the season to finish above Rangers, you'd assume that you'd won the league. So it's an odd situation for us to be above Rangers and not actually be up yet. But we've put ourselves in a position where we can still achieve the goal for the season, which was to get promoted. Difference being, like, there's not this time bomb pressure on us to make it happen, or we're going to go bust, or this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. We're going to lose some players, but then we lose players every season. We lost players last season, not that many we're kind of going to miss, but we lost a lot of players. We're used to rebuilding, we're used to trying again. If we do it again, we do it again. I think this season would be viewed upon differently from other previous seasons where it's been an abject failure. Like, we might have not achieved the primary goal this season if we don't beat Rangers and then Motherwell, but we've got a hell of a lot closer to having a good season than we have for a long time.
Which is all true and fair, but the problem with it is it relies on logic and context.
Of course.
And that is easy here, and this is where we see a disconnect between the preview shows to the reaction shows, because that is straightforward, and as a football fan who thinks about the game, generally you can do all of that now. But if you're sitting in Easter Road on Saturday and they're celebrating, that'll go through the window. And that's what this will all come down to, is that idea of, yes, we can still, in 3 weeks time then we can have a conversation about how much Hibs have come on, how they'll be favourites for the title next season, all that kind of thing. But next Monday we're not going to be saying
it's the way
that.
it goes in football. I'm sure that there's
that's why it's so
I'm sure there was
exciting.
15,000 Hibs fans who, when Jason Cummins missed a penalty last season against Hamilton, weren't going to be back this season. And yet, you know, we've not been playing in front of 18,000 people a week, but we've not been playing in front of 5,000. Emotion came a bit raw for a wee bit, but then people are like, I'm not going back till Petrie's gone. Guess what, he's still there, and guess what, you're still going. Like, the rawness and the kind of emotion that goes with being a football supporter, I think, dissipates at a point, and it's like, well, I'm still going to go. Like, what else am I going to do on a Saturday? So I think that the logic's fine just now. The emotion will be kind of kicking in next Monday, but it should be, in the end, it'll be alright.
Okay. Any final words? I'm not asking for you to give a team talk that Alan Stubbs can use.
I've got a letter actually.
This is not a Rangers podcast.
We've written a letter for Alan Stubbs to
the
read.
Monday Night Football podcast. Letter to the team.
Any final words? Anything that we've not said in this hour and 45 minute Hibs special?
No, I think I better go home. I'm supposed to be picking my wife up. She's going to kill me.
Okay, on that note then, let's wrap things up. I will end with one note. Check out www.mondaynightfootball.com. There's lots on there. There will be lots more over the summer weeks and months, and anything that you want on there, just let us know, particularly through Twitter at MNFitba, FITBA. Stay in touch with us and give us your reaction to both games this week. We will make sure to read all reaction out, at least all the stuff we can read out, on next week's major reaction show to the playoff games that are coming this week. I hope everyone enjoys them, because I think yet again this season we have a City United behind the Hibs cause, so I truly hope everyone enjoys them, and I hope that we are in good spirits. I hope I come home unscathed. Yeah, I hope that we're in good spirits next week,
having the same show again.
Yes.
Talking about Motherwell.
Planning forward.
We will see. Okay, enjoy the playoff games, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. Stay tuned to A Night of Music on Radio Saltire. Cheers.
Cheers.